Ethiopia, a land of ancient history and vibrant culture, stands at a critical juncture. The nation is grappling with an unprecedented crisis, a whirlwind of internal strife and economic turmoil that threatens its very core. The echoes of the Soviet Union's collapse resonate ominously, hinting at a similar fate for this East African nation. The similarities are striking: ethnic tensions simmering beneath the surface, a centralized system struggling to maintain control, and a faltering economy pushing the population to the edge. Ethiopia's current path is a cause for deep concern. The nation is contending with multiple interconnected challenges that have converged to create a perfect storm. The specter of famine looms large, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of conflict. The international community watches with bated breath, hoping for a peaceful resolution but bracing for the possibility of a failed state. The world has seen this before, the slow and agonizing collapse of a once mighty power. The Soviet Union, a superpower that once rivaled the United States, crumbled under the weight of its internal contradictions. The parallels between the Soviet Union's demise and the current crisis in Ethiopia are too stark to ignore. These parallels are not merely historical curiosities. They offer valuable lessons, a cautionary tale about the perils of unaddressed grievances, the fragility of national unity, and the devastating consequences of unchecked violence. The world must pay attention, learn from the mistakes of the past, and work to avert another preventable tragedy. At the core of Ethiopia's crisis is a system crafted to handle its intricate ethnic composition, ethnic federalism. This framework, embedded in the constitution, grants substantial authority to regions defined by ethnicity. Though meant to promote unity and diversity, it has unintentionally heightened tensions, becoming a hotbed for nationalist movements and secessionist ambitions. The Soviet Union, similarly, was a mosaic of republics, each representing a distinct ethnic group. This model of ethnic federalism, while seemingly fostering unity, concealed profound tensions and disparities. When the central authority weakened, these repressed grievances surfaced, igniting nationalist movements and secessionist demands that eventually disintegrated the Soviet Union. Ethiopia's current turmoil is not just a historical echo, it is a stark reminder of the flaws of ethnic federalism. It highlights the necessity for inclusive governance, fair development, and a sincere effort to address historical grievances. The alternative is a slide into chaos and fragmentation, a scenario that should concern all who envision a peaceful and prosperous future for Ethiopia. In 2018, Abiy Ahmed rose to the premiership, heralding a new era of unity and reform. His initial actions, such as releasing political prisoners and initiating peace talks with Eritrea, were greeted with cautious optimism. Yet, his ambitious reform agenda, aimed at dismantling the old order and fostering a more unified Ethiopia, inadvertently unleashed a torrent of long-suppressed grievances and ethnic tensions. Similarly, Mikhail Gorbachev's attempts to reform the Soviet system with glasnost and perestroika, aiming for greater openness and economic restructuring, unintentionally unleashed centrifugal forces that he could not control. The reforms, while well-intentioned, exposed the fragility of the Soviet system and emboldened nationalist movements, ultimately hastening the Union's demise. Political reforms, while crucial for any nation's progress, can be a double-edged sword. When implemented without addressing underlying societal issues, they can exacerbate existing tensions and create new ones. Ethiopia's experience, like that of the Soviet Union, underscores the importance of carefully calibrated reforms that take into account the complexities of ethnic divisions and historical grievances. Ethiopia's internal conflicts have had a devastating impact on its economy. The once promising economic growth has been replaced by a crippling recession, fueled by soaring inflation, dwindling foreign currency reserves, and a growing budget deficit. The war in Tigray in particular has drained the national coffers, diverting resources from essential services and development projects. The Soviet Union's economic woes played a significant role in its downfall. The costly war in Afghanistan coupled with a centrally planned economy riddled with inefficiencies, led to shortages of basic goods, declining living standards, and widespread public discontent. The economic hardship eroded public trust in the government, creating fertile ground for dissent and ultimately contributing to the Soviet Union's collapse. The economic crisis in Ethiopia is not merely a matter of statistics, it is a human tragedy. The soaring cost of living has pushed millions into poverty, exacerbating food insecurity and jeopardizing the well-being of the most vulnerable. The international community must step up its support, providing humanitarian assistance and supporting economic recovery efforts. The wounds of war run deep. The Tigray War, a brutal conflict that erupted in November 2020, has left an indelible scar on Ethiopia. The war has not only resulted in a catastrophic loss of life and widespread displacement, but has also deepened ethnic divisions, eroded trust in the government, and pushed the country to the brink of fragmentation. The recent surge in violence in the Amhara region further underscores the volatility of the situation. The Soviet Union, too, was plagued by internal conflicts in its waning years. The war in Afghanistan, a protracted and costly conflict, drained the Soviet military and demoralized the Soviet public. These internal conflicts, much like the ongoing war in Tigray, exposed the weaknesses of the central government and fueled secessionist movements. The human cost of these conflicts is immeasurable. The stories of suffering, loss, and displacement are a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of war. The international community must use all diplomatic tools at its disposal to bring an end to the violence, hold perpetrators of human rights abuses accountable, and support efforts to achieve a lasting peace. A crisis of leadership. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, once celebrated as a unifier and reformer, now grapples with a crisis of leadership. His initial promise has been overshadowed by allegations of authoritarianism and human rights violations. The international community, once hopeful about his leadership, is now increasingly critical of his government's handling of the Tigray conflict and the suppression of dissent. Mikhail Gorbachev, despite his initial popularity and reformist zeal, faced growing opposition from both hardliners within the Communist Party and rising nationalist movements in the republics. His failure to manage these competing pressures ultimately led to his political downfall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Leadership in times of crisis demands more than just charisma and good intentions. It requires a deft hand, a willingness to compromise, and an unwavering commitment to dialogue and reconciliation. The future of Ethiopia hinges on its leaders' ability to rise above narrow interests, prioritize the well-being of all citizens, and chart a course toward a more just and equitable society. Echoes of a fallen empire. The parallels between Ethiopia's current path and the Soviet Union's collapse are striking and disconcerting. Both countries were founded on a system of ethnic federalism that, while intended to manage diversity, ultimately became a source of division. Both nations went through periods of political and economic turmoil that intensified existing tensions and weakened the central government's control. And both nations saw the emergence of nationalist movements that threatened the very fabric of their existence. These similarities serve as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of unresolved grievances, the fragility of national unity, and the devastating human cost of conflict. The world must heed the lessons of the past and act decisively to prevent history from repeating itself in Ethiopia. Charting a new course. Ethiopia stands at a pivotal moment. The road ahead is filled with obstacles, but the alternative, a slide into chaos and fragmentation, is unimaginable. Avoiding this disastrous outcome demands a fundamental change in strategy, one that emphasizes dialogue, reconciliation, and the quest for a just and enduring peace. The international community has a vital role in aiding Ethiopia's transition. This includes offering humanitarian aid to those impacted by conflict, mediating between opposing factions, and backing efforts that foster dialogue and reconciliation. a world watching and waiting. The world observes Ethiopia with a blend of concern and hope. The stakes are immense, not just for Ethiopia, but for the Horn of Africa and beyond. A stable and thriving Ethiopia is crucial for regional stability and a testament to the power of peaceful coexistence. Conversely, a failed state in Ethiopia would have catastrophic consequences, unleashing a humanitarian disaster and creating a power vacuum that could further destabilize the region. The international community must not remain passive as Ethiopia teeters on the edge. The lessons of the past, especially the tragic collapse of the Soviet Union, must serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of inaction. The moment for decisive action is now. The world must stand with Ethiopia in its hour of need, supporting its people and their journey towards a more peaceful and prosperous future.